Is Britain's legal system now officially anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-male and anti-heterosexual? Today, every magistrate was sent this email. It told them that there were new sentencing guidelines that they should enforce when considering sending someone to prison. That seems to enshrine two-tier justice into law. Potentially one sentence for white, Christian, straight men and one sentence for ethnic minorities, cultural minorities and trans people. You can see it here in black and white. When deciding on sentencing, the magistrate should take into consideration if the guilty party is, and I quote, from an ethnic minority, cultural minority and or faith minority community. I mean, why? What does that mean? There are two explanations for this, in my view. One, this is the bigotry of low expectations. Oh, because somebody is an ethnic minority, they're less likely to be able to understand the law. They must have had a harder life. Absolute load of rubbish. The second, straight up, anti-white racism. You'll notice that the judge should also take into consideration if somebody has disclosed they are transgender. Again, why? Are they less able to understand the law? And another thing you'll notice, judges are being told to take into consideration whether or not offenders say they are victims of human trafficking. Well, what does that mean? Well, every single illegal migrant who commits a crime will try and get a lower sentence by claiming to be the victim of human trafficking. Shadow Justice Minister Robert Jenrick, who's actually on my show later tonight, raised this in Parliament.
Why is the Justice Secretary enshrining this double standard, this two-tier approach to sentencing? This is an inversion of the rule of law. We on this side of the House believe in equality under the law.
And here is Labour's Justice Minister, Shabana Mahmood, saying this. Now listen very closely here.
As somebody who's of an ethnic minority background myself, I do not stand for any differential treatment before the law for anyone of any kind, and there will never be a two-tier sentencing approach under my watch or under this Labour government.
Oh, hang on a minute. Has she not just misled the House of Commons there? Is she telling the truth? Let's look again. The guidance sent out to magistrates tells them to consider as part of a pre-sentencing report whether or not someone is an ethnic minority. And although not binding, as the guidelines say, these reports can be pivotal in helping magistrates decide whether or not to send someone to jail. It's right there. It's two-tier justice. Now, earlier today, Shabana Mahmood, when she was approached about this and realised that it was blowing up, she essentially tried to wriggle out of it. She said, well, she wasn't aware of this. And then, shock horror, what happened? Well, the minutes of the meeting where this was discussed emerged, and it turned out that there was a representative from Shabana Mahmood who was there, and that representative did not raise it. And now Mahmood is saying that her aide didn't actually tell her. So there we go. It's quite difficult to get a straight answer, isn't it? But there we have it. In Keir Starmer's Britain, you are seemingly less likely to go to prison if you are an ethnic minority than if you are a white Christian man. I think that's racist. Let's get the views of my panel this evening. We have the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and former Labour Party advisor Stella Chantakidi. Thank you very much. Mark, I'll just put this to you. I mean, is this straightforward two-tier justice, anti-white racism, do you think?
Yeah, I think we're now getting to multi-tier justice, not just two-tier. There seems to be different rules for all different types of offences and now different types of people. Look, what's reasonable when you get to sentencing is the circumstances of the individual are obviously considered, right? If you have, for example, murdered your spouse, but you are a battered spouse, you're likely to be looked on more favourably. Similarly, if you've got a record of violence over the course of your lifetime, you'll get a stiffer sentence than if you've got a clean record. So the individual's circumstances should be looked into, but not their identity, not whether they are gay, straight, tall, short, black, brown, white or anything else. So I think this is a worrying move. We'll see what the impact of it is. Congratulations to Robert Jenrick for getting on top of it. But guidance should be issued around the individual, not around the identity set they're at. We've got identity politics now running through all sorts of policies in Britain. It's got to end.
Well, absolutely. Well, look, hey, for quite a while over the summer, everyone was told if you believe in two-tier justice, you're some kind of dangerous conspiracy theorist. And now we have it. It's enshrined into law, Adam.
Look, as a straight white male myself, I've felt targeted for the last few years in this country. You know, Keir Starmer's calling us all far right in the summer, and now our courts possibly would rather send us to prison than someone from an ethnic background or is trans. Skin colour, religion, sexuality, or the way you choose to identify should have no bearing on whether you go to prison or not. And I believe this was under consultation when the Conservatives were in power. I think, who is it that...
it was in 2023, I think.
Dominic Raab and Alex Chalk missed it, possibly under consultation. But this Labour government have allowed it to go through. She's got big questions to answer. They're either inept or they agree with this anti-white racism.
I mean, it is racism, isn't it, Stella?
No, I think what is going on here is that Donald Trump got in power for the second time, and you have all of this, what I would describe as the woke right, that is copying the playbook of the woke left, and they're doing exactly the same mistakes that the woke left did. They cannot accept a victory when they get it. For example, Sabana Mahmood saying, I have already written to the Sentencing Council, they will be correcting this. And they are taking it to the other extreme, misrepresenting what is happening. You are saying there wasn't far right, it wasn't the far right during the riots. Well, someone looking at people...
That's not what we're talking about, Stella. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that under this, and this was completely missed by Shabana Mahmood, if you turned up to a court and you happened to be...
I read it, and what it was saying, it wasn't saying that they're going to... It wasn't saying... Patrick, it wasn't saying that they're going to receive a lighter sentence. It was saying that their background is going to be taken into consideration.
Why?
Okay, do you believe that there has ever been racism in this country? Do you believe that there was ever a time in this country where people from a black and ethnic minority background had a reason to be afraid of the police or to mistrust authority?
What's that got to do with...
Do you believe this has ever happened?
Stabs a white person to death.
Do you believe that in this country there has ever been a time when the police has mistreated people who are from a black or ethnic minority background? This is where this is coming from. This has always been enshrined in law. It's not a new thing. The Conservatives were in power for 14 years. The Sentencing Council, by the way, it was made up from people that they would have appointed. But this has always existed. This has always been enshrined in law because the legal system, it has always existed. This, as a principle, this has always existed because the British legal system recognized that at some point, this country, there was institutional racism.
So answer why trans then? Why the other part in that section is transgender. Why should Bob, that now wears a wig and a dress, be treated any differently to, say, me if we've done the same
It's not treated differently. It's not treated... What the pre-sentencing report is, it is literally a description of their background. It doesn't say, treat this person. It is a description of their background. Take it into consideration and how this could impact them.
About here is there's no doubt there has been racism in Britain over recent decades.
One would say there is still quite a bit of it.
There may well be.
Well, there is here, and it's against white people. Anyway, carry on.
That's such a victimhood narrative, Patrick. That is such a victimhood narrative.
Stella, you're suggesting that because there has been a history of racism, that
there is still racism.
Should probably get lower sentences than white.
No, that is not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying. It is not about giving them lower sentences. It's about taking into consideration how they may, for example, come in contact. For example, say that you are a black teenager. You are a black teenager, and you see a police officer, and you are scared, and you do not report a crime. For example, you do not cooperate with that police officer because you are scared, because you are watching TV and you see that police officers.
Okay.
You run. Something is happening. You are involved. You are involved.
God, stop.
1 second.
Adam.
In London, black on black crime is a heavy problem, and especially knives, stabbing people.
Very
the
good.
Stats prove that you are more likely to get a black person stab another black person in London than a white person to stab a white person. So I don't get
the stats also prove, since you're talking about statistics, the statistics also show that people from black and ethnic minority backgrounds are more likely to receive heavier sentences than white people committing the same exact crimes. That is also what the stats are showing.
There should be guidance based on
I think that the guidance
which could affect their sentence.
All the guidance in saying is you are going to do a pre-sentencing report. If there are all of these considerations, they do a pre-sentencing report where you are setting out the specific circumstances.
What could the consideration lead to? So I'm doing the pre-sentencing report. I've considered that the person is, I don't know, black and trans. What sort of decision might that inform?
I gave you an example. Say there is an altercation between two young black men.
No, this is about sentencing.
There is a physical altercation.
Found guilty, yeah.
They've already been
now
found
says in the
guilty at this
sentence
stage.
report, this person who's been found guilty happens to be, I don't know, black and trans. How do you think that should inform in any way the punishment that they are given?
And it's also as well, God, just to bring you in here, Adam, but, you know, seriously, we were told for ages that there was no thing as two-tier justice in Britain. We were told that, you know, we're not treated sometimes as second-class citizens in quotes unquote our own country, right? And now here we are. The other concerning thing is that the Justice Secretary did not appear to know that this was a thing.
Yeah.
She was in the House of Commons earlier. She did not seem to know that this was a thing. So at the very least, she's not on top of her brief.
Well, it's embarrassing for her, without doubt. But I'd also like to know who wrote this. Can we find out the civil servants that drew this up? Because I would like them questioned as to why they've done this. As I said, Stella has her reasons why she thinks that this is fair. As a straight white male, I feel persecuted in my own country.
It's another sign, Patrick, that the bureaucrats are running the country, not the politicians. She may well not be across her brief, that's true, but I am concerned that this sort of stuff comes from people that we can't name, we can't cross-examine, we can't vote out of office, and the relevant minister seems to even be unaware of it.
Mark, why are you embarrassed of the proud history of your country, of fighting racism and being tolerant and being considerate and being sensitive to people's backgrounds? Why are you so embarrassed? This is one of the best things about Britain. This is one of the best things about the British people, how sensitive and compassionate and tolerant and considerate they are compared to other countries. And you are embarrassed of it.
I'm not embarrassed about it. I am delighted that the UK is a civilised, sensitive country. This is particularly about what should be considered when your sentence is being passed for an offence that you have been...
But the statistics still show that black and ethnic minority people receive heavier sentences than white people for the same crimes.
What statistics are they, Stella?
They are the statistics.
What
Go and look them up.
Please cite the statistics.
They are... look them up. Look them up, literally.
You know of these
literally, I don't remember them by heart, but literally
well,
you can...
I don't believe that. And again, if I commit a crime, I would like to know that I'm going to get the same sentence that if Mark was Asian or black or transgender or religious
black people
in some
want
way,
the same thing.
He would get exactly the same
Equality under the
sentence
law
as me.
is the key thing that I'm proud of in Britain, and I'm a bit worried that that is now unravelling.
Yeah, it's also, I think, the bigotry of low expectations, isn't it? And I am sick and tired of that, this idea that people who come from quotes-unquote minority groups... The other thing I would say is, if we are currently... The trendy thing at the moment is that actually white people are the global minority.
That's right.
So if we're using that as a metric for things, then maybe there should be some protected white characteristics in the law as well. But anyway, the Justice Secretary Starmer said this: the Sentencing Council is entirely independent. These guidelines do not represent my views or the views of this government. I'll be writing to the Sentencing Council to register my displeasure and recommend reversing this change to guidance. As someone who is from an ethnic minority background myself, I do not stand for any differential treatment before the law for anyone of any kind. There will never be two-tier sentencing approach under my watch. Well, let's hope she does something about it then. The chairman of the Sentencing Council for England and Wales, Lord Justice William Davis, said one of the purposes of the revised imposition of community and custodial sentences guideline is to make sure that the courts have the most comprehensive information available. The reasons for including groups vary, but include evidence of disparities in sentencing outcomes, disadvantages faced within the criminal justice system, and the complexities in circumstances of individual offenders. Sentences are decided by the independent judiciary following sentencing guidelines and taking into account all the circumstances of the individual offence and the individual offender. We'll look a little bit later on. Robert Jenrick, Shadow Justice Minister, will be on this show. He's the one who raised it in Parliament. He's the one who's been banging the drum for this. It'll be really fascinating to hear what he has to say. But